Welcome back, everyone, to the Box of Inspirations show. Today, I have Kelly Roach with me. Kelly, thank you so much for being here.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. And Kelly is the host of the top-rated podcast, Unstoppable Success Radio. She's an international best-selling author and the CEO of Kelly Roach Coaching. She runs business coaching programs, mastermind groups, online courses, and much more. But before that, Kelly was an NFL cheerleader and a Fortune 500 executive. Kelly, why don't you take us through the journey from NFL cheerleader to today real quick?
Yeah, definitely. So I grew up competitively cheering and dancing. And, I also grew up in a family that struggled a ton with money. And so when I was choosing what school to go to, I really picked a school that I was going to be in the least debt when I graduated. And so they didn't happen to have a Division I dance team or cheerleading team. So it was a little bit of, it would have been a big step back, but I wanted to continue. I wanted to keep pushing myself and learn and grow and do something new. So I said, okay, my school doesn't have a Division I team. What would be a great next step to keep growing, keep learning? And so I was like, okay, we're right outside Philadelphia. You know what? I'm going to go for it. I'm going to audition for the NFL. And so my first year in school, I did that at the end of my freshman year, and I became the youngest girl on the team. And it was great. It was such an amazing learning experience, and, had the opportunity to network and be amongst such high-powered people in every walk of life. And, it just taught me so many things about professionalism and communication and, presenting myself and being out in the public eye. And then when I graduated, it was time to get serious about making money. And so I got started with sales and recruiting, and I started at the bottom in the most entry-level position, and I just worked my way up. So I was promoted 7 times in 8 years. And I was just focused on teaching and training people on sales and marketing and pricing and how to have confidence in themselves, how to believe in themselves. And, I was able to help lots of people to double and triple their income and achieve some pretty big, exciting goals. And, then it just got to a point where quality of life became a factor, and also the desire to want to make a bigger impact on the world and, do something that I felt was making a difference. And that's why I decided to start Kelly Roach Coaching, because I wanted to take my knowledge and experience and focus it in on helping entrepreneurs to be successful, impacting their family, being able to create change and make a difference for others.
7 times in 8 years. That's really impressive.
Yeah, thanks.
Did you start your own business after those 8 years, or did you do anything else or work more on that same company for a few more years?
Yeah, no, I started my business on the side after my 7th promotion. And, I started on the side and then built it up from there. And, people always ask me all the time, should I get a day job to, fund my dream business, or, am I not a real entrepreneur if I, start that way? And I always tell people, you're more likely to succeed if you have cash flow when you start your business. Because if you don't have cash flow coming in to pay for the website and to do marketing and to do advertising and to hire a VA, that's why a lot of people give up, because they run out of money, quite frankly. They take out all the credit lines that they can, they run out of savings, they drain their bank account, and then they're still not at the point where they're successful. Most people underestimate, how long it takes to really build a successful company. In your first 2 to 3 years, typically you're not going to turn a profit, and you have to be willing to go through that process if you want to build something legitimate that you're going to be able to ultimately, transition and support your family with.
That's so true. About 2 to 3 years. And you need to have a budget to work with, because that will make it a lot more easier for you to grow your business. And I know I've heard this story about you launching your very first webinar.
Oh my gosh.
So tell us about that story and what happened.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think the hardest thing about transitioning from corporate, where you've had a successful career, into becoming an entrepreneur is you're starting over. You're starting over from nothing, and it's so humbling, because you go from being on the top of your game, having accomplished all of the success and knowing what you're doing inside and out and feeling like you have control, to going to like zero, where you have nothing. And I remember, my first webinar, I spent so much money. I mean, I don't even want to remember how much money I spent on hiring a coach and advertising and taking off of work and all of this stuff and planning and preparing and practicing for weeks. And, so I'm like 15, 20 grand into this thing at this point. And, I show up and I give the webinar, and I'm not even selling anything at the bottom of it. I'm just inviting people to apply for a free strategy session. And I just got absolute crickets. I got nothing. Like, it was a total flop. And, it didn't work. And it was such a humbling, important lesson for me at the beginning of building my business, because it was at the very beginning. And it just helped me realize, like, wow, there's going to be a lot of patience and practice and time that goes into this. This is not an overnight thing. So I think that definitely set me straight a little bit in terms of like what to expect as an entrepreneur. But I think sometimes those big disappointments often set you up for your biggest success in the future. And now webinars are like a huge part of my business,
A setback like that, especially in the beginning of your journey, I mean, it would force many out there to just stop what they're doing, just return to the safe job that they have or had. But the mindset that you had to keep going despite that happening, what was it? How was it?
Yeah, I mean, I just knew I had worked for almost a decade to achieve the success that I had in one realm. And so it wasn't going to be, if it was that easy, everyone would be retired on the beach and everybody would be running a successful freedom-based business. And so for me, I just said to myself, okay, like, this is the reality. This is what it is. And if I really want this, and if I really want to go all the way with this, like, this is a defining moment for me. It was a defining moment, for me as an entrepreneur. And it set me up for so many future defining moments, because one of the biggest things I've learned as an entrepreneur is that everything's a test. And the first time that you do anything, it's typically going to fail. And if you're not willing to do something 100 times or 10, 1,000 times, don't do it at all, because it's going to take those first 100 times to really get it to the point where you're happy with the result and seeing real results from it.
I think your mindset there, it's the key to why you are where you are today, because you see everything as a test. You try new stuff, you have setbacks, you have very good results, but still it's back and forth all the time, and until you find what's working. And now look what's happening with the webinars for not only your business but for the whole industry. So let's go back to that webinar and talk about webinars. What's key for them to work out? So what do you need to have in place for hosting your very first webinar?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of things. There's a lot of things. It's taken me, so that webinar that we're talking about now was almost 5 years ago. And it took me a good 3.5 years of doing webinars to get to the point where,
3.5 years.
Yes. Where I feel confident, I'm going to get on a webinar and I'm going to make sales and this is going to be profitable. Right. Yeah. And, so there's so many elements that make or break it, but I would say one of the most important elements was audience readiness. And I think that's almost always where entrepreneurs get caught in the trap. Even if you have the money to advertise, even if you have the money to drive traffic, if you are making a relationship-based sale or you are in a service-based business where people buy based on relationship, rapport, affinity, all of that, that takes time. So for me, I think having all these new leads who had just come in contact with me for the very first time, like we didn't have that trust. We didn't have that bond or that relationship yet. And that's the thing about entrepreneurship. It's a long game. Mm-hmm. And too many people want that overnight success. We all want that overnight success, but that's simply not the reality. And so for me, what I went back and did after that webinar was I realized I knew I was a great speaker. I knew I was a great presenter. I knew I could make a difference for people. I had been presenting and speaking for years before that. And so I went back and I focused really, really hard for the next couple of years on building my relationship with my audience and adding value and, serving them and putting things out constantly that made a difference for them. And then, reapproaching webinars once I had some goodwill in the tank, you might call it, so that now the people that are getting on my webinars have been consuming my podcast and watching my videos and, have been a part of my community. And so when they're getting on the webinar, they're ready to buy because they've been through that engagement process, if that makes sense.
Definitely. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon, and you need to take your time to build that trust, the relationship. What's another common mistake that you see people make with webinars besides not building their relationships beforehand?
Yeah, well, I think the balance of teaching and then the structure of the pitch are really important. So, you want to make sure that anyone who gets on your webinar says to themselves, I would have paid for that. Because if it's anything less than that from a teaching standpoint, you really break down your brand. Because most people don't buy on the spot, and most people are consuming your content as a part of their decision-making process to even decide whether or not they're going to buy from you in the future. So the first big thing is make sure that from a teaching standpoint, that someone getting on your webinar would leave and say, I would have paid for that. That's number one. Number two is the structure of your pitch is absolutely critical. And there's 35 different points about the way that you present your pitch that are important, from the guarantee to the scarcity to, going through each element of what they're going to get, to talking about what they're going to create and what their ownership experience is going to be like. There's so many different elements of an effective pitch, but I think not being afraid to do the pitch and being structured and certain and confident in the way that you do the pitch, that you have a smooth bridge from, hey, here's what I just taught you. You can go out and implement it on your own, or I can walk you through step by step the system for how you're going to take what you just learned and actually implement it and start generating results from it. So bridging that gap for people and building all the triggers into that pitch are so important. And besides that, it's making sure that the product or the program that you're selling is not what you want to create, but what people want to buy. And that's another huge mistake we've all made. I've made that mistake, certainly. You have an idea for something you're really passionate about that can make a big difference for people. Well, that's great. But if that's not in their conversation in their mind already, or if that's not something that they recognize as being a need, it doesn't matter how much it would make a difference for them. They're not going to buy. And that's something that we all miss the mark on at some point in our entrepreneurial journey.
It's key to test it out, to know what your audience wants, because what they want might not be what they really want.
Yes.
But I think I really love what you said, that they don't make the decisions or they don't purchase on the spot. So everything you do, everything you create is just to minimize the gap for them, to make it easier for them to make the decision and eventually maybe purchase from you. And the build up and the follow up are so important when doing webinars. How many emails are you usually sending out, and what kind of value do you give to the people who have already signed up for your webinar, but the webinar itself hasn't happened yet?
Yeah, definitely. So, anywhere from 3 to 5, and that depends on, are they getting a general email from our own email list because they've already been on our email list, or up to 5 if they registered and joined our email list from an advertisement for it. And again, your expectations and your results are going to vary significantly depending on, are these new people that just learned about you, or are these people that have been following for weeks or months or years? I find that most of the people that buy live on my webinars are people that have been in my funnel for years, and it just so happened they've been studying me and watching me and listening to me, and now is their moment. And so the webinar just gave them that little push over the edge to say, okay, I'm ready. So anywhere between 3 to 5. And we're testing some different strategies right now. So, sometimes we'll give a webinar a workbook. Right now we're testing out like a little bit of an assessment prior to. So we're kind of trying like a couple different strategies, but in terms of the value ahead of time, we might share like a couple podcast episodes that we recommend that they listen to before jumping on, or an audio or video training, a PDF. We definitely want to add value and build excitement getting, as we get close to it.
Perfect. So we have a little bit of time left in this interview. So before we dive into the last part, let's talk a little bit real quick about the follow-up sequence as well, because if you're making mistakes with the follow-up, you're leaving a lot of money on the table.
Yes.
So what's the key to have a successful follow-up campaign after your webinar?
Yeah, will have a successful follow-up campaign. So the first thing is understanding exactly what you said. Just as many people will buy after the webinar as will buy live. I mean, think about it. I've never bought live on a webinar before. I probably never will. I want to go through the sales page. I want to read the emails. I want to really understand. I want to make a good decision about whether or not it's right for me. So think about how you make a buying decision and realize a lot of other people make a buying decision that way as well, which is why a very structured follow-up sequence is right. So there needs to be a cart open and a definitive cart close. And something bad needs to happen if they don't buy by that cart close. So what is that? That's either added bonuses are going away, the price is going up, registration's no longer available, access that they would get to you, they're not going to get anymore, right? So you have to build a bridge for them that has a definitive start and a definitive end, and there's a reason to buy specifically in that period. I found that we definitely struggle when there's no reason to buy now. And, scarcity is it's just a fact of life because people by nature are procrastinators. They procrastinate, right? Yeah, so unless you give them a deadline, there's no reason to buy now. So in terms of that follow-up sequence, the start to finish from open to close is very important. And in between, there's a couple things that you want to do. You want to use social proof. You want to share case studies and testimonials of people that have gotten the results that you're talking about. You want to give them a very clean, clear, concise picture of what they're going to get. You want to really tie in the emotional triggers of what they're going to feel like when they start to experience the transformation and the results from working with you. You want to reiterate what the guarantees are. So you want to make sure they know, like, hey, the risk is on me, not you. This is how you're protected. If you get into this and it's not right for you, here's how you can get out of it. So all those little things make such a big difference. And then that cart close day, 2, sometimes even 3 emails really saying, like, come on, I know you want these results. That's why you joined this webinar to begin with. You're ready for this. You've got this. I believe in you. Let's get started.
Kelly, before we hit the last round of this interview, share the easiest way and probably the best way people can connect with you.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I would say Unstoppable Success Radio, if you're looking to build an unbelievable business that's around your family and freedom and fulfillment and fun, listening to Unstoppable Success Radio is the number way to go further, faster, and accomplishing your goals with 3 episodes a week. Each one is a little bit different. It's a great way to just add value to your business and your life and get results quickly. So I would say check out Unstoppable Success Radio. If you want to get in touch with me directly, you can email me, coaching@kellyroachcoaching.com. You want to find out how can we work together. There's a store on my website with all my programs, my products, my courses. So I'm out there. You'll find me. If you want to connect, I would love to hear from any of our listeners.
You will find the link to her podcast or her website below this interview. But now it's time for the last round of this interview. I call it the Unexpected 3. Kelly, are you ready?
Oh, I'm ready. I'm ready.
Awesome. So the first one is, what's one of your favorite online tools or resources right now that you're using?
I would say Basecamp is a great tool that we use within my internal team to keep team members organized, to rank and prioritize tasks, to keep everyone up to date, to save from lots of emails going back and forth.
Awesome. So number 2, what is one key takeaway that you want people to take from today if they are thinking about hosting and creating webinars?
Patience, 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 persistence. Find someone that teaches a system, follow and learn from someone already doing it, and recognize that, every success story that you hear about a 15, a 20, a 60K webinar, that was 5-10 years in the making. So be patient, be persistent, and never stop until you accomplish your goals.
Be patient, work hard. And the last one is, take us back to the day when you decided to go your own way, probably after the 7th promotion. With the experience and the knowledge that you have today, what's one advice that you would give to yourself back then?
I think just being a little kinder to myself in terms of everything that there is to learn to become a successful entrepreneur. I've changed so much. I've grown so much. I've been through heck and back, right, on the journey. And there's nothing more worth it than becoming an entrepreneur. But, you have to have the stomach for it, and you have to be kind to yourself, and you have to be patient with yourself, and you have to realize that there's nothing that can prepare you, and there's nothing that you can learn from a classroom or just from listening or watching someone else that will do the replacing of going through the experience of learning and evolving and growing yourself as you do it. So be patient, be kind to yourself.
Kelly, thank you for both the energy and the knowledge that you brought in today. Your sick mindset and the journey that you have made, it's unbelievable. So thank you so much for being on the Box of Inspiration show.
Oh my gosh. Thank you for having me. This was so much fun. I appreciate it.